Get ready for this PS5 price hike. Is Sony working on a Vita too? And there's a secret PS5 exclusive. If you want a cool new upgrade for your PS5, check out all the links in the description. I've got new SSDs, controllers, monitors, all the new in-zone accessories, pretty much anything you need for your PS5. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the Not Podcast. I'm here with my boy Ray Trevino.
Yes, sir. That's right. I am PlayStation ready now.
Guys, I'm never going to beat God of War. I had a trip. I'm leaving tomorrow. I started this game early. I have played this game every night since it came out for hours. I'm like 45 hours in at this point, and I felt like I was getting to the end. And then it opened up Vanaheim into a completely new area, and I was like, I'm not beating it before correct. I go. But I've been taking meticulous notes in my notebook. I've been drawing out little maps for people that I don't kill that I'm going to come back and kill later.
I don't like how I have to go back to places. I don't like how it's like, oh, you know, you gotta
feed it to me.
Oh, you gotta backtrack. Oh, you don't have the thing that you need to access these chests or do this.
That's my favorite kind of game.
Yeah, I don't know. At that point, I'm like, I do like the new Niflheim Raven Tree. But enough about God of War. We're here to talk about another game, right?
Yes, the Callisto Protocol may be a secret PlayStation exclusive that you can buy on Xbox. So as it turns out, Glenn Schofield, the guy who's like the mastermind behind Dead Space, who's also the leader of the studio Striking Distance, who's making the Callisto Protocol, I guess there was an interview done with him recently where he basically said that he worked with Sony's, I forget what it's like their visual arts team, to make a lot of the cutscenes and a lot of the gameplay animations for the Callisto Protocol, which is good because this is the team internally at Naughty Dog, I'm pretty sure, that started The Last of Us Part 1 remake, and then Naughty Dog kind of took it over, and it was a little bit of drama. Like the guy Michael Mumbauer, who had been there forever, who was leading this team, he left Sony. Now he's doing an NFT game with the guy who led Sony Bend to make Days Gone. So a little bit of drama, but this is a good visual arts team.
And it looks like I saw on Twitter that they use the same mocap studio that Sony uses for a lot of their projects. It looked honestly like a lot of the stuff we've seen from the mocap God of War actors that they've been posting.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, if it ain't broke, I mean, they got good physical animations and good, very on-point facial expressions with their games and stuff.
Yeah, all the trailers for Callisto Protocol.
Is it weird to say that I'm more excited about the Callisto Protocol than the Dead Space remake?
No,
is that controversial?
Every time, like, it's happening with Splinter Cell, it's happening with Dead Space. They just like needlessly change the game, and with Dead Space, there is virtually nothing you need to change. There's nothing to change. There are barely any side characters. Isaac Clarke says like 3 words the entire game. Like, I don't know.
I was excited to hear that he's going to have more dialogue in the remake.
Yes, that is cool. I like that because he talks a lot in 2 and 3.
Yeah,
you know, like the scene with the eye needle in 2. I'll never forget it. I love Dead Space so much. It's just like
the gravity stuff really blew my mind at the time. Oh yeah, and hearing that they're going to update that, but I'm more excited about the Callisto Protocol, man. I can't really explain it. It's just a gut feeling for me right now. And what we've seen like at the Summer Games Fest when they showed off like the gore stuff, I was like, holy crap! Like literally getting crushed by like that freaking like turbine, whatever the hell. The fact that it's a secret Sony exclusive, perhaps, or Sony project. Have we gotten any word that there's going to be like quests or anything that are only available on PlayStation 5 or only available on Sony? Because like I just cannot stand that and like timed exclusives. I'm like, come on, man. Like, what,
with like Hogwarts Legacy,
Legacy with the timed like it's like a special haunted house quest that's only available on PS5 that's in Hogsmeade or something like that. I'm like, come on, man.
You're not going to get any exclusive DLC or anything, but what you are going to see, which is awesome, is DualSense support and 3D audio support for supported headsets. So like the Pulse 3D wireless and the InZone H7 and H9 and H3 will all have 3D audio. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if this starts getting like turned into news stories more with other games. Like I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of third-party games that use this Sony visual arts studio, because when you go see a movie from like Sony or whatever, right? Like if you stay in the credits, you'll see towards the end during the visual effects section, like ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, the Lucasfilm like effects studio that's like legendary, they show up in everything. Like whether it's Sony, whether whether it's Fox, well, I guess Fox is owned by Disney now, whether it's Sony, whether it's like MGM, Paramount, you'll always see ILM popping up. It's just like you can contract out different studios, and it doesn't really hurt Sony to allow that, like, because they're going to make money off the game, right? They're going to make 30% off every game purchase. I wouldn't be surprised if even Xbox studios use like the Sony mocap studios at some point. Where is the Vita 2, guys? We have a new render from Devin Sindel, which is really cool. It just looks like a Nintendo Switch that has like DualSense split in half that snap onto the sides. It's got the PS5 interface, and it makes me want a Vita so bad. And the sentiment is growing because you see like IGN just put out an article today that's like, where is the Vita? Like, why is there not a PlayStation handheld? Like, we need it more than ever. And if you look at the history of portable PlayStation games, they figured it out. Between God of War Chains of Olympus, God of War Ghosts of Sparta, Resistance Retribution, Uncharted Golden Abyss, Killzone Mercenary, Killzone Liberation, like they were so good at having a smaller studio work on a side game that had its own handheld style of gameplay to go along with the bigger games, like, you know, Ghosts of Sparta with God of War 3.
Yeah, I mean, those were good days. Those were good days. I'm going to straight up say that. I loved the line of sports games on PSP.
Like
I used
the
to play,
Street ones?
Yeah, Street and NBA Live. I used to play a lot.
Dude, NFL Street
those
was
were good times, man. Really good time. Would it have been cooler to do a Vita 2, like a new PlayStation handheld? Because, you know, VR... And I always get caught up in the hype. I'm like, that looks cool. And then when I have access to VR tech, like I have a Meta Quest 2. I have it and I barely use it. Like I'll bust it out every couple of months and then I'm like, that was cool. And then I'll put it down. But I feel like people would have gotten a lot more mileage out of a new PlayStation handheld. And handhelds are hot right now, man. Like the Switch is selling really well. And, you know, cloud gaming over on Xbox, people seem to really be into with like playing Xbox on your phone and stuff. Kind of seems to me like the PS Vita 2 would have killed instead of the PSVR 2, which is people were excited for it, but then they were like, oh, the price, I don't really know if that's worth it for me. You know, I feel like everyone would have been down for a new handheld from PlayStation.
They could just call it the PSP 2. They could be like, the Vita was the offshoot. We're going back to that PSP name that you have nostalgia for. A Spider-Man game on PSP 2 would be awesome. Like, you could do so much stuff. Just go back to what you were doing in the PS2 generation. The PSP could theoretically run PS2 games. It was a PS2 shrunk down into the size of a handheld. And it's like the way those games were built was so much more conducive to like playing for an hour or two versus like sitting there and playing through an entire console game. Because like if I'm at home, I love my Steam Deck so much, but like I still tend to gravitate towards either my PC plugged into my TV or my PS5, just because it's like I can play at 60 FPS at 1440p on the couch.
Yeah, going back to the whole VR thing as well, I feel like as we move forward, people are getting more skeptical of VR. They're kind of getting more like, oh, is this worth it for me personally, the investment in VR? But handhelds, people seem to be more interested in handhelds. And I feel like the Steam Deck really has changed things for that. People are saying like, oh, Xbox, why don't you make a handheld like the Steam Deck, but it's like runs Windows? Oh, hey, PlayStation, why don't you do something like the Switch, but it's like a smaller PS5? You know, I feel like interest is growing, interestingly enough, in handheld gaming again, when it kind of seemed to be teetering off a little bit. You know, no more Game Boys. Switch is the Switch is the only thing going forward, you know. So
that's
it's
been a
kind
big
of
issue with the Switch too, is that a lot of the first party Nintendo games, I mean, outside of like Pokemon, right, which has just turned into like a console style of the handheld version of games, they've been putting non-handheld style games on the Switch, and you have the option to play them as handheld, but I feel like a lot of people just end up playing them on the TV because they're games you want to sit there and play for a while.
Right.
So long story short, Sony should either partner with Valve and make PlayStation login ubiquitous across the board and like link it with your Steam account, or they should get their launcher going so you could like download that on the Steam Deck and have your saves transfer, or they should just like go all in and make a handheld. I think they need to figure out some way to capitalize on this market because people really want to play their console games on a handheld. Now we got to talk about the PS5 getting a price hike because, you know, the monkey paw is curling in. You're able to walk into a Walmart and find the Horizon Forbidden West bundle. You're going to start paying more for it, and people are a little scared. They're like, is this price increase that's happening everywhere else going to come to the United States? And it seems like, yes, it is going to happen because yet another country has had a drastic increase of the price of the PlayStation 5. This time it's India.
I feel like India has been hit with a couple of price increases at this point. Like they always seem to be getting the short end of the stick when it comes
We
to
looked it
the
up before this
increases.
video, and the rupee is crashing compared to the dollar. So the dollar is more valuable. But even if you do the cost comparison, your dollars to donuts paying way more in India. Like if I went to India and converted my money to rupees and then bought a PS5, I'd still be paying like $682 for that PlayStation 5 versus the $500 that it's available for here, or even $400 here. You can get the digital edition.
Yeah, I mean, yikes. I mean, if you're really going to spend a lot of time with this console and you're a big fan and you are a big gamer, sure, that investment is probably going to be worth it. But for everyone else, it's like scalper price is worth it. If you pay $800 for a PS5, is it worth it? That depends on the individual, of course. But I don't know. It's
for a while there, it was like if you got the money, just do it. Like $700 is a lot for the console, but if you want the PS5 and you can't find one, I get why people were spending that money, right? Like it just gets frustrating after a certain amount of time, and you could just save up a little extra, buy the PS5, grab PS Plus Extra now, and then you get a whole library of like the entire 2 years that you've missed. I mean, you're getting like a lot of the launch titles for free with that extra subscription.
Yeah, we're talking games like Returnal and New Ratchet and Clank, Ghosts of Tsushima Director's
Demon
Cut.
Souls,
And
Sackboy: A Big Adventure,
The Last of Us remaster, not the remake.
Yeah,
the
but
remaster.
I bet you'll see part 1 get added to that eventually.
Before
And
part 2?
yeah, I feel like part 1 will get added because it's a remake of a remake. At that point, I feel like Last of Us Part 2 still needs a director's cut as well, but I think the price hike will come. I don't think you'll see it on this PlayStation though. I think you'll see it on the Slim and the Pro whenever they announce that new edition next year that's going to have the detachable disc drive. I think that's when you'll see the price adjustment where they're like, look, we got to increase the price for inflation. You're going to start paying $550 for this thing, and that's just how it's got to be. Or you could pay $500 for the digital edition and upgrade to get the disc drive later.
They could keep the price the same and just take the loss.
Yeah, they won't though. They said they're
know
not going to take any losses on the PlayStation
They
hardware.
take no L's.
And yeah, like you look at the PSVR 2 and the price they're charging for that, it's clear they're not taking a loss on that headset at all.
No, they just said no L's, like just no L's here at Sony. Even though like the games are selling like hotcakes and the services are popping off. Well, maybe not so much PS Plus as we thought, but yeah, I mean it's tough out there, and it seems like this price adjustment over in India seems to be tied to the strength of the rupee.
I kind of get why they don't want to take an L on the console though. Like before, you had to convince people that video games were worth it, right? You had to convince them to go out and spend $60-$50 on games. But now people want to play PlayStation games. So I feel like charging money to the point where you're going to actually make a profit on the console is fair. It's just like you got to figure out a fair price where you're not price gouging people.
But a lot of people already feel price gouged, with the increase in games, increase in hardware. PSVR 2 comes out, it's more expensive than the PS5. Like, and money is tight all around, so there's anxiety regarding this topic of price increases. Money's already tight, and like I'm being punished because things out of my control happen. Like the supply chain was all messed up, and like, there was a chip shortage and stuff, and I would have bought it back then, but now it's getting more expensive. Like, people are just getting screwed like at every step.
Yeah, it sucks, but like, it's not PlayStation's fault that the dollar lost value, right? Like that inflation is happening. That's not Sony's fault. So expecting the corporation, like if Sony doesn't make a profit on PlayStation, you don't get anything. Like the games just stop. Like they're going to have to reorganize and make other things more expensive or make less games.
And again, that's going to be subjective. There are some games that you spend $70 on, you're like, should have waited. There's some games you spend $70 on and you're like, that was nothing, right? Because you enjoyed it so much.
And you know what sucks is they're adjusting the sales across the board as well. Like before, you could wait till a game was $40, right? Like a few weeks later, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Origins, it would come out before Black Friday, and you'd be like, man, on Black Friday, that game might be around $40, maybe even 30. And now it's like you're waiting for games to drop to 50 and 40 versus 40 and 30, and it's like that sucks. That's where I'm like getting mad about it.
Well, certainly Sony stock is up. Opinion of PlayStation and hype for PlayStation is at pretty high right now. So they could definitely take advantage of that and raise the price. And I feel like would have no repercussions. They're still selling like hotcakes.
It's crazy. God of War outsold Call of Duty in the UK the weekend it came out.
That's wild. I mean, when do you think we could expect to see, because we're based in the US, both of us, when do you think we could expect to see a price increase here?
Whenever they launch that PS5 Slim, I feel like they're gonna be like, look, man, it's got to be more expensive. I feel like it's a lost cause increasing it right now, because the demand is so high for the PlayStation 5. Like anyone they can sell, they're going to sell. So seeing those bundles in stores where they are like a bundle, it helps, right? Like them selling a bundle for $550, they're really not losing any money that way. That's like $50 of profit for them. Like it doesn't hurt them to give you the game with that bundle, but because it's like a first party game usually. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. And you know what's weird? This is a tangent. People always talk about how Horizon's numbers are juiced by the fact that it was included in so many bundles. Sony and MPD don't count bundles towards game sales. Which is kind of weird.
Kind of weird.
Long story short, if you're at the store this holiday season and you see a PS5, get it now before you're paying $550, $600 for it. I think that's what the moral of the story here is.
That's what the moral of the story is. Yeah, pick it up. Do whatever you need to do to get that PS5, because it might not be so cheap anymore.